it's really fitting this morning as we're in this series of Deuteronomy that, Mother's Day happens to fall in it. And I say that to my husband. He planned this whole, the topics for this, 5-month sermon series we're doing out way early. And I said, "Oh, did you do that on purpose?" And he said, "Yes, I did." I thought it was like this happy accident, but he intentionally landed us in Deuteronomy on Mother's Day. And part of the reason is this book focuses so much on care of the next generation, care and commissioning of that generation. And so that is some of what we're going to look at today. The goal, Moses is coming. He's at the end of his life. Pastor Aeric talked about this a couple days ago, and there's verse after verse of him telling the Israelites exactly how to do this right. Literally exactly what to do. It's pretty simple. Mari talked about this last week. Obey, right? Obey. She talked about it a lot. Stay and obey. And also that our lack of obedience is usually a major factor, if not the most common obstacle in our relationship with God. But it's so simple. Here's the direction that was given to us by God through Moses. And we read Deuteronomy 11:18 through 21. It says, "So commit yourselves wholeheartedly to those words of mine. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Teach them to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, so that as long as the sky remains above the earth, you and your children may flourish in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors." See, I love this verse. I actually was just telling, we have a couple of our men in the kids' room today. Can we give them a big round of applause really loud so that they hear it? And our goal was to have all of the moms be able to sit in service today. And I don't know if you know, but historically in churches, most of the childcare ends up being done by moms. And so I'm really grateful for our men that say yes and will step up and will be a part of this, especially because kids need both male and female influence, right? And it is really great when we get men of our church who say yes and are willing to serve in that way and are crushing it, but they haven't really been in there before. These two in the little kids room, they've done the big kids a couple of times and they haven't really been trained. And the one thing I said to them was, listen, here's the Bible verse, you're going to play the video, and here's the Bible verse, and you really can't repeat the Bible verse too many times, right? This is our goal. It's here on a piece of paper. The video has the motions, and it's repeat it, do it again. And then eventually we'll actually do that for 5 weeks with these little kids, and maybe they'll be able to say it at the end. That's our goal, right? But this is what the Israelites are in the process of. And they're saying, and we say, I think too, God, there's 613 of these laws. Does that mean in order to obey that I have to remember them all, remember all 613, and then I have to do them perfectly every time, and I can never mess up, and there's no grace, and da-da-da-da? No. That's what we tend to make it into, but that's not actually what God communicated. What it is a heart of obedience. I'm going to try to follow. I'm going to try to do this. And then this verse says, your children will be blessed. You do all of this and your children will be blessed. You have to carry the desire to obey and a yearning to walk in alignment with the path that God has planned for you. Sounds so easy, right? Easy peasy. Here's the 613 things. Just do them. Too much. Okay, I'll whittle it down to 10. Just do those. We still don't do good at that. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to narrow into one of them because 10 is clearly too much for us to stay. And to be honest, I don't think that anyone in this room really struggles with I need to figure out how to stop killing people, right? I don't think that's the one, right? So, if you do, we get Daniel, that's you. All right, now we know. But I bet we all struggle with resting. Yeah. So today, and moms, if you're like me, this phrase is the bane of your existence because you're I wouldn't do that. But your own oxygen mask first. God, thank you so much for giving us this manual, this direction, this, relationship building path to walk with you. We're so thankful for it. We are sorry that we fall short of it often. And God, I pray today that you give us all some guidance on how to walk it better, walk closer to you, and continue to grow closer with you. We love you. We praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. So this is the part where I get real, right? Being a mom, I got to keep myself from swearing, actually. Being a mom is crazy. Is crazy. There's a recording. It's going online. Okay. Okay. It's crazy. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not just a mom, I'm a boy mom to 3 of them. And currently their ages are 3, 5, and 10. So like we're in all the easiest phases, right? And this is like fresh 3 and fresh 5. And I don't know if you saw, but like the 5-year-old just was this morning right before service, like, Mom, this is the worst day at church I've ever had. Okay. Okay, drama. Like one of your favorite humans is in the room playing with you today and you don't want to go back there. Just drama everywhere. And just because we told him to do it, he doesn't want to do it. Right? And then 3 is just it's a whole other thing. Thank God for 10. We're in the sweet spot at the moment where I don't know if he can hear me, but the amount of times he has said to me today, I'm just going to be as helpful as I can, Mom. Oh, yeah, it's great. Give him big high fives if you see him after service. But on top of all this, right, if you haven't noticed, Pastor Aeric is missing today. He's missing because he decided to be gone on Mother's Day. And at this point, he's been gone for 4 full days. So we are still making it. It's a miracle we're here and dressed and ready to go. Our house is like semi clean. It's fine. He did say something about you're going to realize how much efficient your life could be while I'm gone. And there is some of that because he makes half the messes in our house. But and the kids do chores when he's not here, but no, it's fine. We love him, we miss him, but it's been like kind of wild. And this story, I feel like is the current epitome of my motherhood experience. It was a couple months ago and I was in the little boys' room. They share a room, Marvel and Rigby, and I was doing laundry, right? And there needs to be air quotes and they'll make sense in a minute because Eric opened the door and actually what I was doing is laying on the floor on my stomach with my phone, scrolling through Instagram or something, I don't know, playing a game or something, and definitely listening to Percy Jackson because I've been reading that with my kid and I'm reading through it all and not doing laundry at all. Right. And the door was closed and it was quiet. And I'm like, I'm just going to be me for half a second. And so my husband comes in and he says this. First he laughs at me, but then he says, I think I know now what it's like to be you. Which, okay, husbands, Daniel, what do you think the reaction is going to be? That's like a dangerous statement, right? That's kind of a ballsy statement to make. Okay, let's be real. Like, and so either it's going to be really great or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. It's like a surefire way to start an argument. And so he shared and he said, "Yeah, well, I was, upstairs and I was trying to fix something that really didn't need to be fixed, and I didn't have the right tools to fix it, and I didn't know what I was doing. But I was fixing it. And then I came downstairs and in the living room, Balin is like burping the alphabet and Marvel is shirtless, just he's in that new like hand is just tucked in his underwear all the time. Kind of phase. And they're like watching wrestling and they're like yelling at the TV. It's like epitome boy stuff, right? And then he's like, then I walked through the hallway and your male dog that you decided we needed to do was sitting there like licking his junk. And then I went down the stairs and I saw Rigby, and he is butt naked in the basement watching superheroes and using something as a gun that shouldn't really be used as a gun, and making like gun noises with his mouth, and so, and he goes, and then I walked upstairs and I found you, and I think I get it, what it's like. And all I wanted to say is you don't get it, because none of those things bothered you the way they bother me. Um, but my actual response was, why do you think I'm in here doing laundry? Doing laundry. But this is all that was happening while like I was okay, if I had been doing my job, was trying to keep the house moving, right? Like this is kind of one of those things of motherhood, is a big load is keeping the house moving and keeping things going. And sometimes there's so much noise and chaos and disorder in our home or in our lives that we just end up zoning out a little bit, right? We veg or we doom scroll, which we never do, right? Or watch Netflix or stay in bed way too long. And this is what we call rest. But this is not restful. And I think back through the stories, there's an awful lot of maybe not rules that are being broken in what my husband like reiterated to me was happening in the house, but there were definitely several expectations not being met. Because here's the thing, if I was in the little boy's room doing laundry, that means that everyone else in the house had been assigned something to help the house, and clearly none of it was happening, because it was not fixing something that didn't even need to be fixed. And it was not watching wrestling. And it certainly wasn't like wee wee gun downstairs, superheroes, like whatever that was. It was none of those things, right? And also like there's plenty of other expectations of the house that were not happening here. And so our house, what we needed in that moment is we needed a little bit of a reset, right? And so this is what Deuteronomy is kind of doing. And what I've learned in motherhood, I'm not sure I had a full understanding of before, but if you want someone to really understand, if you want something to really get absorbed, much less get past like the noise or someone's discomfort or apathy to actually do something, you better have that thing on repeat. You're going to have to say it over and over and over again. The amount of times I have told my boys, listen, you can go out back barefoot or you can leave your shoes on all the time, but quit running around in your socks, because socks are expensive. And we have these little sap things back there that you just keep getting stuck to or burrs getting stuck to your socks. And then I try to pull them off, or they get on our other clothes because you just crumple everything up and throw it in the washer. I don't think I could say that enough. I don't think I could ever say that rule enough. But did you know in marketing, there's this rule, right? Is anyone in marketing in the room? Yeah, I'm looking at I know a couple of people. So it's called the rule of 7. And it's that you have to say something or interact with a person on the same topic 7 times before they're going to get it. So say you have the most fantastic bar of soap in the world, and you tell someone, I tell Kelsey, this soap, it is the best soap you've ever had. You have to use it. Are you going to go buy it? Yeah, she'll forget it. She'll forget it. You have to say something like that 7 times. But here's the thing. That rule of 7 was established in the 1930s by movie executives who wanted people to go see their movies, which also was like an enjoyable pastime thing. So imagine you're trying to tell someone a rule, and you're trying to do it in 2024, where there's all this noise and all these notifications and shorter attention spans and all these things. And really, it's more like a 70 times 7 situation now, right? Did any of you get that? It's a Bible joke, guys. It's good. It's good. I'm just trying to be like my husband while he's gone. So it's fine. Just trying to channel a little bit of his dad joke, Bible joke energy here. But we have to do it so much more. So in Deuteronomy, this is kind of where we're at. Like Moses is on repeat, right? We called this section This Again. You might feel like you're hearing some of the same things you've heard already. Guess what? You are. But I bet you can still learn something, because We don't have it. I wrote this message and I don't have this figured out yet. Okay. So there's plenty of things to learn. And we repeat it because it's important. It's really important. And Moses is repeating it because it's important. And like we said, he's in his dying days. He's trying to get the people to commit this to memory. He's reached the point in his life where he knows it's coming to the end and he wants to create this legacy that goes beyond him. And he desperately wants, I think, like so he's essentially fathered this nation for years. And like any dad, he just wants something beyond himself. I think, like any of us, something to continue, something to go forward. And he believes in it so much that he's taking the time. And what I love about Deuteronomy, he's getting a little more aggressive about it because he's kind of like, hey, dummies, you haven't gotten this yet. Let's figure it out now. And he wants this, he's talking about things that the Israelites, sure, you could have done this better, but he's not so focused on like you screwed this up and you screwed this up and you screwed this up. He's more focused on here's what you try. Here's what you try now. Here's what you focus on. And he really wants their children and their children's children and their children's children to do it better. Fun fact, did you know that you're included in those children's children? And if Moses was actually in your like direct lineage, it'd be something like 75th great grandfather. So it feels a little watered down at this point, right? It feels like, how could they be talking about something then that really is going to impact, or like, how can the rules or the regulations or whatever it is continue to impact this way? Well, that was the whole point. Actually, the whole point was that it would be this legacy that like forever and ever could carry through. So let's look at just one of the 10 commandments as we go through. And like we talked about, we're not very good at it. We're going to talk about rest today. And I want to do a little poll real quick. Is who thinks I'm wrong? And you're like, I am really good at resting. I get a good night's sleep and I feel good about it, or I know how to shut down and tune out the whole world and different things. Anyone feel like they're like a rest pro in here? Sorry, James, you're wrong. Your wife recounted to me, I just didn't feel like I could rest. A statement that came out of your mouth like within the last week. No, you said it to her. He was like, no. Okay, and then who is like, yeah, I'm real bad at this. Please give me all the tips. Like I need to figure something out. I can't remember the last time I woke up and felt like I had like rested, like slept good, or like can't remember the last time I really let my brain turn off and like do things. If you didn't look around, it's basically all of us. So we're really, you're my people. We're not good at this. It's fine. It's fine. There's a lot working against us, but we can get better. The best thing about being like really bad at something is you basically can only get better at it, right? So that's our goal today, is we're all going to get just like a tiny bit better at rest. So, moms in particular, as Levon kind of said this in her message, in particular, we are extra bad, right? Because momming, there's all this extra weight. Michelle just walked in and she's had a whole car morning, but I heard she did kin keeping. There's this presence of kin keeping, and it's like remembering all the birthdays and the anniversaries and the like extended family stuff, and not just that, but then also like your kids' school concert and their field day. That why do parents go to field day? Like, just I don't know. I don't know why I feel the pressure that in order to be a good parent, I have to go watch you do a potato sack race where you just want to talk to your friends anyways. So it's like it's all these things surrounding us, right? But here's the thing, while I'm talking to moms today, and there'll be a lot on that, this is for all of us, because you've all got something that gets in your way. You've all got something that you're struggling with to keep moving. And so Moses, he's reached this point. He's wrapping up with the Israelites and he sits them down, right? He sits them down and he reiterates the 10 commandments in Deuteronomy chapter 5. And what I find really interesting, and part of the reason I picked out rest for today, is that as he's going back through these, we've heard them all already, right? We've heard them all actually a couple of times. They came down from the mountain, and they were delivered direct from God, and they're on these giant like stone tablets and all this stuff. We've had all the fanfare around them. And this is Moses now just like speaking, and he's saying like, guys, please just get it, because I'm not gonna be here soon to make sure you get it. I'm not gonna be here soon to be your conduit with God. So you better have some sort of relationship with him. And he's saying this is how you do it, right? And what I find really interesting is that as he recounts these, there's several of them that are just like one line, right? Like, don't kill people, honor your father and mother, don't put other gods before me. They're just like one line. And then, in your Bible, you open it up and there's like 2 columns on the page, right? And so you have like this length of words. So this much of it in this recounting is about the Sabbath. Like most of that column, and everything else is just listed. And when the Bible, or when a speaker in the Bible does something like that, it's our clue to tune in and say, either we're really not getting this, or it's really, really important. And what's really interesting for the Israelites at this time is they really, really weren't getting it. And there's a reason for that. But let's read this passage in Deuteronomy 5:12-15. So this is the expansion, right, of what Sabbath is. And it says, observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female servants, your oxen and your donkeys, and your other livestock, and any foreigners living among you. All your male and female servants must rest as you do. So this tells us there is no hierarchy to rest, right? Nothing in there. Everyone has to rest. And then it goes on and it says, remember, you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with his strong hand and powerful arm. That is why the Lord your God has commanded you to rest on the Sabbath day. So as we look at this, Moses knows that the Israelites are struggling on this one, and there's a reason, right? This is a generation that had been enslaved for years, for generations and generations before that. And if you can only imagine as stressful as our everyday waking lives are and how difficult it is for us to find rest, imagine existing in slavery. There's no rest. Even when you're sleeping, you're terrified, you're captive to someone else. There is absolutely no way to find any kind of rest. You might sleep, but you're not resting. And so this group of people had no concept of how to do this. And this is part of why this is such a firm rule is, hey, for 6 days, you do whatever you want. But then on the 7th day, everybody, anyone who's a servant in your household, male and female, kids and adults, whoever it is, everybody just stop. That's all it is. Just stop. You see, this is the same generation of people that as they traveled through the desert, there was like a visual and physical interpretation of this, that they didn't have any food. God began to drop manna from heaven, and which manna is like bread, it's sustenance. It's what they needed. It was actually everything they needed to survive on, essentially. And it dropped from heaven, and it would drop from heaven for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, nothing came. But on the 6th day, they got double, right? And God said, hey, go take double what you need, because tomorrow nothing's coming. And tomorrow you're supposed to just rest. And that physical representation of this concept, even that wasn't enough to get this to be ingrained. It's like that concept of, and show of hands, if you said this phrase when you come back from vacation, I just need a vacation from my vacation, right? Right. How privileged are we these days that that's what comes out of our mouth, right? But you know, that feeling is like you went and you were supposed to have all this time of rest and enjoyment and restoration, and you come home and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to work tomorrow. Or like, real life, my pile of laundry is still here. Like, no magic elf came in and did all my dishes while I was gone, or like, dropped a pot of gold so I could go on another vacation, whatever it is. Like, life is all still there. And so Moses is reminding them, like, hey, I know this is hard. I know this is hard. I know you don't have any concept of it, but you got to start somewhere. And so that's why this is literally a command, because it's not in our nature very well to rest. We need it. It's required. Our body is thankful for it. We know what it feels like when we do it, but it's not just ingrained in us. We actually have to work for rest. And so God gives us a command, because unfortunately today we're not all that much different than the Israelites, right? Like, we're not in physical captive slavery, but we allow ourselves to be enslaved by so many things in our lives instead of what's good for us. We're physically free, but are we mentally, emotionally, spiritually free enough to embrace and embody regular rest in our lives? You see, in a world that is filled with keeping up with the Joneses and like Instagram versus reality, and way, way more than 613 expectations and rules of who and how we're supposed to be, it's really hard to find freedom and rest. So this is going to be hard, this journey to rest. It's going to be hard. And moms, we'll come back here. You have it especially hard. A couple things about motherhood, if you don't know, your entire journey is filled with immense sacrifice. You see, you literally start with a tiny human who siphons off all of your nutrients and like rearranges your organs to fit and shoves that tiny little heel like up under your rib, and it feels like a knife and you can never get it out. And while their heel is here, then their whole giant head is just sitting on your bladder, and you basically have to pee all the time. All the time. So that's how it starts. Really, really great, right? And then in the meantime, so said tiny human is making you not to be able to sleep at all, basically, right? Before, and they're like, oh, sleep so much before the baby comes, because then you're never going to get any rest. You can't sleep pregnant. I'm sorry. There is a point in pregnancy that it just becomes impossible. It is like every inch of you hurts and you can't move, and there's no amount of maternity pillows or like kicking your husband out of bed or fans or whatever it is helps you sleep better. And you just kind of lay there and you're like, exist, right? And also you can't take like half the drugs that would help you sleep. Heaven forbid. You can't do any of that. And so then, great, the baby comes out and you're like, I'm gonna sleep, and it cries all the time, and then you have to feed it, right? And this statistic always gets me, and it really hones in on breastfeeding moms, but I just say, like, I had the privilege of trying that a couple times, but there are a lot of ways to feed your baby. But if you choose to breastfeed, it is 1,800 hours of time in a single year spent just feeding your baby. And if you don't breastfeed, it's about that same amount of time. I'm always a little unsure why, like, it's so honed in on that, because I have fed both ways. Listen, I held a bottle with formula just as much as I sat down and nursed. So it is a journey just to keep them alive and fed. And then at the same time, you're probably a wife and a student, and you have a job, and you have all these other things in your life that you're trying to keep up with, right? And then there's like that first year of life, and um you've got a lot of help around, right? But then as they get older, a lot of the help seems to like fade away a little bit. And I've got mom friends who are spending 8 hours a day every Saturday at the soccer field, or like have to go to field day, or have to go to all these other things. Or, if you're like me, for 11 years, we've been driving an hour round trip twice a day just to have people we trust care for our children and to be able to afford it. Like, there's all these things, and that stuff starts to eat up all your day, right? And then you have no time left. Like, when on earth would I possibly try to rest? And see, Moses understood something when he was trying to explain this to the people. But then there's a quote that came later on that I think really hones in on this. If you plan to fail, or if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And this was said by Benjamin Franklin. And I know you've probably heard some stories about the amount of times he failed, right? And he is like a failure guy, and it always comes out of positivity. It comes with a positive result. But here's the thing I really want us to hone in on, like in this idea, is that rest requires effort. And beyond that, there's the idea of rest, right? But then the idea of Sabbath, an entire 24-hour period where you've disconnected and you've calmed and you've rested and you've restored, requires a lot of planning. And I've, personally understood the importance of a 24-hour period of Sabbath for about 6 years now, probably, and still can't find that 24-hour period. Can't find it. Doesn't exist. I have so many things in the way. And so because I can't find 24 hours, I just don't. I just don't even start. I don't even try. I don't, I'm never going to be rested. I'm just going to be, someone said to me the other day, well, you'll sleep when they're all grown up and out of the house. My youngest is 3. I do not want to not sleep for the next 15, if he walks out the door at 18 years. That's not my plan. I'm going to figure it out now. And so what I've started to look into is, what does it take? What does it take to actually have a Sabbath? And there's this interesting concept of Sabbath that there's actually preparation day before that, right? And you're like, oh gosh, you need more time, like more work, more time. You're making more, requiring more things of me. But look at that. On the 6th day, double portion dropped down. In the Jewish culture, as this went on, they had the day prior, they did all this extra meal prepping and chores and different things so that truly on the 7th day, they could sit down and they could rest. You see, in order to plan for this, we have to understand what it truly, truly is. And in the Bible, there's this general rule of thumb that if you really want to know what something means, you find the first mention of it, right? And so when you find the first time God sent a new concept or a new word or a new place, that is like the truest meaning of it. And you use that to interpret everything later on. So as we're looking into Sabbath, we need to look at what is the first mention of this concept, right? And it's actually this idea, this group of people, the Israelites, where he provided the double portion. And before this, the word wasn't applied to it, but even before we hear the word, we see God demonstrate this, right? Because what did he do? He took 6 days, he created the heavens, he created the earth, he created everything. And then on the 7th day, he rested. And so I was listening to another message, and it said something like this: even God needed to rest. And he did all this like literal world building, physically creating things from nothing and all these things and all this high level of work. And then he rested. And so he set up the example well before he ever told us what to do, right? And then he rested. And we read this in Exodus 16:23. This is the first mention of Sabbath, right? And he's talking to the Israelite people. This is as he's explaining the manna from heaven. And it says he told them, this is what the Lord commanded. He is Moses here, and Moses is their conduit, their direct communicator from God. He told them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow will be a day of complete rest, a holy Sabbath day set apart for the Lord. So bake or boil as much as you want today and set aside what is left for tomorrow. So what does a real Sabbath look like? Complete rest. Absolutely nothing and everything. It looks like zero expectations on yourself or from other people. It looks like sharing time with some of your favorite people. It looks like turning off your phone, having some time to worship with God. It looks like walking to places that you would normally drive, or holding on to that hug until your child lets go. It looks like meals around the table, games played, memories made. It looks like a lot of things that when we get them, we say, oh, that felt so good, but we don't let ourselves have them very often. It looks like simply being, simply existing with no plan, no agenda. One of my favorite things about vacation is never having to set an alarm for anything until the day I need to fly home. But I really pick later flights as often as I can, so I still don't have to set an alarm on that last day. You see, our staff, we've been reading through this book. It's called Practicing the Way. And it explores the idea of an apprenticeship with Jesus that is actually a complete life shift from where we are right now. And it centers on these 3 principles that the best version of ourselves and our futures is to simply be with Jesus, become like him, and do as he did. And the book explores practices that when we put them into place, they allow us to begin the journey of apprenticeship and have a new, more authentic and effective way of living. And it starts with this one we're talking about today, partially because it's the hardest, but partially because it unlocks the rest of them. And here's how this book defines Sabbath. The Sabbath is a 24-hour time period set aside to stop, rest, delight, and worship. It is the best day of the week. In our era of chronic exhaustion, emotional unhealth, and spiritual stagnation, few things are more necessary than the recovery of this ancient practice. Doesn't that sound nice? When was the last time you felt delighted? When was the last time you giggled, When was the last time you woke up feeling rested or you let your mind fully break? It takes work. It takes planning. And what I want to pose you with today is, are you ready to try it? Are you ready to set up your life so that you can hear God? To practice a time of quiet? Can you turn down the volume of life? Can you turn off your phone? I know I struggle with all of this, but I am ready to try. I am actually desperate recently to try. And like the Israelites, I know I'm going to have a hard time. I'm going to need this message on repeat. I've been repeating it to myself for a year now and getting closer and closer and closer to what real rest looks like. What I'll say is I'm glad that I have this community to try it with. I'm glad that there's people around willing to step in and remind me that things don't matter, or remind me that I don't need my phone, or remind me all the different things, remind me of the things that I've forgotten. And so that's the task for today. Last week we heard about stay and obey, get in community. Those things are so important because you need community to take the next steps.